Searching released back in 2018, and to me, ever since the first trailer I saw of it in the movie theaters, I thought it always seemed like an intriguing premise, and for some reason, it fell into the category of those kind of movies where it took me 5 freaking years to finally watch it. So I watched Searching for the very first time ever last night, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Honestly, I really loved Searching, especially with John Cho in it. If you're unfamiliar with him, he was Harold in Harold and Kumar, so it's always honestly a delight seeing him in dramatic roles, just because he does do a damn good job acting outside of comedic roles. Now, Searching was actually a really great movie with an intriguing premise and actually a really strong story. And by the end of the film, I applauded completely all of the twists and turns that were within its plot and story and storytelling and structure. The problem I had with Searching was at the halfway point, there were a couple inconsistencies in its pacing about halfway through the film. It just felt slower, but it was always a mesmerizing film with a mesmerizing, twisty story. With that, I would say Searching is a very strong 9 out of 10. Now, fast forward 5 years later from 2018, or in my perspective, one whole day later, and we get Missing, which is basically the spiritual sequel to Searching. It features a whole completely different cast of characters and actors and actresses, and technically a whole new story. And while Searching was mostly about the abduction or missingness of a daughter, Missing is about just the disappearance of a mother from a daughter that disappeared on her vacation with her new boyfriend. Now, Searching wasn't really an action film by any means. There were a couple scenes where there was kind of fighting, but it was never really bloody or violent or actiony or anything. Missing sometimes is like that as well, but by the end of Missing, they turned it into a straight up action thriller, and that's one thing I didn't like about Missing. My overall biggest gripe with Missing is that they didn't really stick to the plotting structure of Searching, which usually that's okay for sequels because you don't want to plot over retread for story. But in the case of Missing, I believe they should have done what they did from Searching, just because in Searching, you actually discovered and knew everything about the main family's characters. In Missing, you're kind of just dropped into this family where you find a little segmented video of a mom, a dad, and a little girl, and it's about 15 seconds, and then it basically goes into like 10 years later or 15 years later or something, and then everything is completely changed, and then it starts with the mom and the daughter not really bonding that well. And don't get me wrong, Missing is a good story, it's a good film. I still love the premise and how it's told. I still think that's very innovative. It's just the story itself, it just seems so superficial compared to Searching. Searching was a mystery thriller through and through. And while Missing has the same aspects, it doesn't really fully land on being a mystery thriller. It feels like it wants to be so dead set on being an action thriller, and it feels so jarring. By the end of the film, it's like B-movie worthiness of action scenes, and by the end of the film, too, you do end up being established with all of these characters, but honestly, throughout the entirety of the film, I actually felt more towards some characters that they were trying to portray as the villains rather than the family themselves. And that's because, like I said at the very beginning, in Searching, we find out a lot about their lives and just the family. In Missing, we're just dropped into mom and daughter with a very vague past, and then the majority of the film, you're supposed to root for these people that disappear and wonder what's going on, and you don't really have much to go on. And then you're supposed to look at other characters as the bad guys, and then you find out some actually surprising twists, and you actually care more about other characters than you do the main family at certain points. And then by the end, you do end up caring for this family. The problem is that it literally takes up until the very end, and then this family is well established. That's the biggest problem with Missing. It's not that it's a retreaded story, it's not that it's retreaded plot devices. All of that is fine. It's what they tried to make new. It's what they tried to change from Searching. Those are the biggest problems I have with Missing. And especially since they're classifying this as a pseudo-sequel to Searching, honestly, it doesn't really go off of much from Searching, other than the plotting of it using webcams and the like. Now, this isn't a terrible film by any means. It's just that Searching was so much more interesting and entertaining because it felt so fresh, new, raw. It felt like it had established characters. You related to those characters, you felt for those characters, especially with all of the twists and turns in Searching, and there were a shit ton. Missing, even with the pretty good twists and turns that it has, it still ends up ultimately feeling like another kind of B-movie actioneer, which is weird just with the plotting on how they tell this film story. Now, the acting was fine, but honestly, Searching's acting was so much better. Missing, though, it's missing a lot of shit that Searching already established and had to use for great storytelling. I appreciate that these filmmakers that were an accompaniment from Searching, they tried to establish their own names for Missing, but ultimately, it's such an inferior version of Searching, mainly just because I didn't give a shit about the main characters. I cared more about everybody else. I cared more about the twists. I cared more about the story than I did the main characters. And that is the fatal flaw of Missing. It's that there isn't really much heart at the center of Missing. And it's all due in part to basically a lack of an intro. If they had just given us basically the same formatting of Searching, at least in the intro, that led up to ending up at the current timeline period, then yes, this would probably be an exceptional film, set aside that pretty bad third act. But ultimately, Missing is really just an okay to good film. It's not terrible. It's just trying so hard to be something that it's not and should never be. Should never have even attempted to be. So for me, Missing is a 7 out of 10. Thank you. If you would like to support my reviewing passion to the fullest, please click the link in the description of this video to subscribe to my OnlyFans. Thank you.